What is up, Primes? Nathonis back here with another video for you, and I know it's been a while again. Things have changed. Yes, this is actually permanent. Kind of. You'll see. It'll go back to blonde eventually. Just not anytime soon. So I know it's been a while. I hope you all have had a Happy New Year. Merry Christmas even, if you celebrate that. And if not, well, I hope you had good holidays anyway. But yes, pre-winter break, I would say, I can't exactly remember when winter break started, I did watch Spider-Man No Way Home, and I wanted to do a review of it as soon as I saw it, but there was such a strong stigma against spoilers for it, so I've been trying not to spoil it as much as I could, but since it's basically, run its course, I guess. Most of you have seen it. If not, why are you watching this video? If you don't care about spoilers, then by all means. But I'm warning you, this video will have heavy spoilers. Nothing I say should be taken lightly. Like, everything I say about this movie, I am warning you. Alright, so, basically, the movie starts off right where Far From Home left off, where Mysterio had revealed Peter Parker to be Spider-Man. Basically, at this rate, Peter is kinda screwed. Although, for the most part, they kinda brushed that off fairly lightly. Like, okay, so people now know. Kind of a load off his shoulders, but other than that, now it's kind of stressful, which is kind of ironic. And yes, he does in fact get in trouble with the law. The law does not exactly take kindly to all of this, especially Aunt May, because as far as they're concerned, she's partially responsible for this, which isn't right at all. So, who's the lawyer that they bring in? Well, Daredevil. Yes, I am being serious. Charlie Cox does actually make an appearance, and he's playing Daredevil. But, the lawyer side of him. So, I've never watched the Daredevil series, but I know pretty much everything about it. So the fact that we had, spoilers for Hawkeye by the way, the fact that we had Kingpin in the Hawkeye series, and Daredevil in the Spider-Man movies, what does this mean for the future? Likely means that we're going to be getting basically all of the Netflix Marvel heroes in the MCU. So far, there's no way they can deny that. So yes, Daredevil was in No Way Home, as many people had theorized. Awesome, right? Yeah. And then he shows his reflexes to be faster than Peter's spider sense. Or Peter Tingle. They still haven't used the term Spidey sense, which really throws me off, but whatever. So, basically, bunch of law-based shenanigans that doesn't go for long. Literally, he says, I'm a good lawyer, and everything's fixed. But, they need a place to live, so they stay at Happy's apartment, condo. It's a very Stark-looking place. And, of course, Stark Technologies ends up getting raided, which is not good. The police basically take everything they can from Pepper, from Happy. We don't see Pepper, but we can assume that she's likely in a lot of legal trouble now. Anyway, all of this issues basically means that Peter, MJ, and Ned can't get into MIT. That is their dream goal in life, is to make it to MIT, but they can't because of their connection to Spider-Man and the controversy around that. And it completely screws them up. So Peter decides that it would be a good idea to go to Doctor Strange. And unlike the trailer, Doctor Strange is immediately willing to do this. Like, he's like, alright, I'll cast the spell. And Wong is just like, leave me out of it. And then he goes off to be in Shang-Chi. So there you go. So Doctor Strange, without hesitation, immediately casts the spell. And Peter realizes, wait, everybody is gonna forget that I'm Spider-Man. Ned should know, MJ should know, Aunt May should know. Basically, everybody who knew I was Spider-Man before should know. So he changed it roughly 5 times. Doctor Strange says 5, so... Wait. Ned, MJ, Aunt May, everybody who knew before. Who's the 5th? I'm thinking it was Doctor Strange. He actually added himself to the list because he actually didn't want to forget Peter. Either that or there was some kind of moral obligation there, but who knows. So, he attempts to cast a spell, but because of how many times Peter changes it, it doesn't go well, and the entire crypt just completely crumbles around them, and then comes back together, and Strange manages to contain the spell into a little crystal sphere, kind of like what we saw in What If. And that sphere, he says, is basically everybody from every other universe in existence who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. They're in that box because they were coming through to the MCU, to that universe. Unfortunately, some still got through. So, with the whole spell going awry, Doctor Strange is very mad at Peter. Like, you changed the spell 5 times. To which Peter is like, sorry. You know, I just wanted to help my friends get into MIT. And at this point, like, Doctor Strange is done with Peter. And he's like, you had me almost erase the entire world's memories when you could have just called them? I could have called them? And that's how he gets kicked out of the Sanctum Sanctorum. Which, by the way, is covered in snow because they opened the door to Siberia and they forgot to close it. Oh yeah, and Wong is actually the Sorcerer Supreme due to a technicality of him not being blipped, whereas Strange was. So, oops. But yeah, Peter could have just called MIT and said to give his friends a chance, but instead, he wanted to brainwash all of the whole world. Big brain. So instead, he's left with no choice but to find the person who's basically making the decision, who is already on her way to the airport. This isn't good, so he has to go chase her down as Spider-Man. Everybody knows who he is, so he may as well just take off the outfit and walk through the freeway. He finally catches up to her. He tries to convince her. And then all of a sudden, the bridge starts to shake. Something ain't right. Boom! It begins to collapse. And yes, it is Doc Ock. So, him and Peter get into a fight. Peter saves the woman who makes the decision on whether they can go to MIT because for some reason her life was in more danger than everybody else. That is terrific. And Peter manages to use the nanotech on his suit to take over Doc Ock's arms, which I didn't think was possible, but hey, it worked. So he manages to calm Doc Ock down, basically doing that. And then eventually, a bomb comes in. A pumpkin bomb. And yes, it's Green Goblin. I think Doc Ock's bewilderment at Green Goblin appearing is perfect, because as far as Doc Ock knows, Green Goblin is dead, and he's been dead for years. So this is odd. They're alive. Doc Ock is confused as to who this kid pretending to be Spider-Man is, because he thought it was Peter, but it's not his Peter. And Norman is alive. How? What? The confusion. I know. So, of course, Peter has to go back to Doctor Strange at some point. Oh, no, wait. Doctor Strange already teleports him there to the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's that easy, apparently. And Doctor Strange, his first line, "Be careful what you wish for, Parker. It's a good point. He was almost killed by people who never existed up until this point." So, yeah, Doctor Strange gives him that warning, tells him who these people are. They're people from other universes who know that Peter is Spider-Man, or their version of Peter is Spider-Man. So, they have to go catch them. Next up on the list is actually Electro. Now, they do actually play a bit of Electro's theme, a quick little 2-beat of that really epic sounding synth beat. Yeah, that one. And basically, they have to find a way to capture him. He's electric. He shoots this teleportation web, I guess you could call it, which is supposed to send them into the cells in the Sanctum Sanctorum. But he shoots at Electro and goes right through him. Sends a freaking tree into one of the cells. But Flint Marko shows up, if that makes any difference. If anybody remembers Sandman from, what was it, the third Sam Raimi Spider-Man? Something along those lines. I haven't watched Sam Raimi Spider-Man in a while. But he shows up, basically out of nowhere. And Peter does the same thing that the other Peter did in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 by basically overcharging the power lines and basically blowing up Electro, giving them some sort of advantage, except Electro is now human. And he actually looks decent as opposed to in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He actually has proper hair and he's got a goatee, so that's unusual. But it works. And so he captures both Sandman and Electro against Sandman's will, because Sandman was actually trying to help him. And he decides to stay back to help clean up the mess that they made at the power lines. Eventually, Peter has to go and find Green Goblin, which it's difficult because you want to find Green Goblin, you have to find Norman Osborn. They are two completely different people. So when Peter shows up to Feast, owned by Aunt May, of course, he discovers Norman is homeless. And you realize that Norman isn't acting here. Norman is genuinely homeless because, like, this isn't the New York that he's from. Like, he doesn't exist in this universe. Oscorp doesn't exist, he doesn't exist, his son doesn't exist, which definitely takes a toll on him. But he doesn't have any choice but to go to a homeless shelter. And Peter realizes that he can't just send them all back to their universes where they're destined to die. Doctor Strange disagrees. bear in mind, this is the same Doctor Strange who, like 3 or 4 movies ago, literally said, "I am a doctor. I've sworn to save lives, not end them." And now he's saying it's their fate. If they die fighting Spider-Man, then that's how they're supposed to go. But Peter wants to give them a second chance. So, Doctor Strange, attempting to send them back through this box, which I can't remember the name of because, God forbid, I try and remember anything that Doctor Strange has names for. And Peter is just like, yeah, I'm not going to let that happen. Webs the box. Don't. And he runs off with it. But as soon as he gets out of the Sanctum Sanctorum, boom, there's Doctor Strange. He opens a portal. Yeah, you're coming back. Yeah, that didn't work. I actually love the bit where Peter takes the box. He still has the web that can send people into the cells. Webs Doctor Strange into the same cell as Doc Ock. And Strange is like, this is why I never had kids. I can see why. So yeah, Peter leaves the Sanctum Sanctorum. There's Doctor Strange. He can't fight a sorcerer. So Peter tries to web away, but because of Strange's portals, he ends up webbing himself. And Doctor Strange grabs Peter, pulls him in, knocks him into his astral form. Peter is scared, like, I'm dead. You're not dead, I just knocked you into your astral form. He tries to grab the box from Peter's actual body, but because of his spider sense, he can still move while he's in the astral dimension, which is freaking weird, but it makes sense. I mean, he's got the spider sense. Fun little detail, you'll see that when Peter is flying around in the astral dimension, you can actually see the comic accurate, like, spider sense, which is actually a nice little detail. But he swims back to his body. Him and Doctor Strange get into a fight, which leads them into the mirror dimension, where basically they're on a train, which then goes through the Grand Canyon, and Peter uses his knowledge of math to take all of the mirror dimension fragments and basically tie Doctor Strange up. He takes the box and goes back to New York. Skipping forward a bit, Peter thinks it would be a good idea to try and fix these people who are very clearly broken. I mean, they're villains, what do you expect? So he takes them back to Happy's apartment, which apparently is a good idea. And he tries to come up with a cure for them. First up is Doc Ock, and it actually works, because Doc Ock was never bad. It was the arms that were controlling him. They got to his mind. So of course, Peter fixes him first. And he becomes a good guy. Hooray! Which we only saw briefly in the Raimi movies, like just before he died. Which is sad. But yeah, Peter fixes him before he realizes that something is off. And he's trying to fix everybody else at the same time, particularly Electro. But Peter is having this very intense spidey sense. And he realizes that something's not right with Norman. And he webs Norman's hand. And we realize that it ain't Norman, it's the Green Goblin. Because as you may remember from the original Sam Raimi films, Norman had a basically Jekyll and Hyde sort of persona, where basically he can be Norman 1 minute and then Green Goblin the next. So basically, Green Goblin does his typical villain speech in that very menacing voice. Willem Dafoe plays it perfectly. And that it's a problem, because you now have somebody who is very powerful basically talking you down standing like 3 feet away from you. And Peter tells Aunt May to run. She has basically all of the cures for the villains, right? And so she needs to get out of there so that they can fix them. Electro's like, no, screw this. Takes off the device that's supposed to fix him. And he also turns against them. Then basically a fight ensues that destroys the entire apartment complex. Peter's fighting Green Goblin. Eventually, they make it to the bottom floor, where Aunt May eventually is confronted by Green Goblin. Peter tries to join in, but he ends up getting his ass kicked by some miracle, and when Aunt May tries to fight back, she gets hit by Green Goblin's glider. That's some alliteration, isn't it? And Green Goblin throws a pumpkin bomb. Peter tries to catch it, fails, but somehow prevents any serious collateral damage. I mean, yeah, the entire front of the building is completely blown to high hell, but still. This is perhaps one of the hardest scenes in the movie, because Peter realizes that something's not right with Aunt May. But she says the infamous lines, "With great power there must always come great responsibility," before she collapses. And he realizes that she was stabbed by the glider, because don't forget, those things have blades, and they weren't there for design purposes only. And they actually killed off Aunt May. Now, I know that some people don't like this version of Aunt May, but it's still Aunt May. Like, we had actually more than 3 movies to really get to know her, because we also had Civil War and Endgame, where she was only in it for like a couple of seconds, but still. And of course there was Homecoming and Far From Home, so that's like 4 right there. Now we have No Way Home, so 5. And they just kill her off, which doesn't feel right. That, like, if they killed off Happy, that would have made more sense, but that still would have been depressing as hell. So Peter is, depressed. There's really nothing that he can do. So he's basically hiding now, as he watches J. Jonah Jameson basically slander his name right in front of him. Well, meanwhile, MJ and Ned are staying at Ned's mother's place. Or grandmother. Something along those lines. I don't exactly remember when it happened. I think Peter stole Doctor Strange's sling ring, but somehow Ned got it. And they're talking, and Ned's like, "I just wish that we could see Peter." And then sparks appear. MJ's like, "Do that again. I just wish we could see Peter." Portal begins to slightly open, and he does it again. And the portal opens, and they're calling out to Peter. There he is, in an alleyway. And then he hears them calling them, and he's like, "I may as well go." Runs to them, jumps through the portal. It's not our Peter. Who is this guy? Well, I mean, granted, Ned's mother reacts rather appropriately by throwing a freaking chair at him. Anyway, this Spider-Man guy, who looks like Spider-Man but isn't Spider-Man, takes off his mask, and boom, it's Andrew Garfield. Well, that's already a good sign, isn't it? They're like, "Who the heck are you?" "I'm Spider-Man." They're like, "We don't believe you." And they go through a lot of questions, of course, as you would. And MJ is very apprehensive. So she throws bread at him. And he's like, "Why'd you do that?" And she's like, "Just trying to see if you had the tingle thing." "Oh, I have the tingle thing, just not against bread." Why would you throw bread at Spider-Man? So he concludes it by saying, "You're very untrusting, and I appreciate that." So he jumps up and sticks to the wall, or the ceiling. It works. And then Ned's mother is like, can you get the cobwebs over there while you're up there? And he's like, all right. So he goes and cleans that. And then they decide to do it again to see if they can get Peter through the portal thing. But what ends up happening is it opens a portal to a roof where some random dude just walks through. And Ned even says, great, it's just some random guy. And it's not Peter. It's Peter, but it's not Peter. Okay, it's Tobey Maguire, but still, it's Peter. It's confusing. So Peter and Peter see each other. Tobey and Andrew, they see each other. They're confused, so they test each other's skills, and they do the exact same moves. It's freaky, but it's cool. It's cool to see these two interact. And they realize that they are in another dimension. It's kind of obvious, given the fact that they've never met any of these people before. They've never seen this version of New York before. And they know that there is another Peter out there who is likely in danger. They eventually meet up with him. Our Peter. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just try and call them by their actors' names. Tom is now currently in a very depressed state. MJ and Ned are there to comfort him now. And MJ states that there's some people there that he needs to meet. And it's Tobey and Andrew. They basically explain how they've also lost people. Tobey explains that he lost Uncle Ben, and Andrew explains how he lost Gwen, which was his MJ. And we also get to hear more about what happened to Andrew's Spider-Man after the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. How even though he tried to carry on and be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man as Gwen would have wanted, he became less jovial. He stopped pulling his punches. He became dark and bitter. And that's kind of an arc that I would have loved to see, but we unfortunately never actually get to see it. Until now. We get to see sort of a character conclusion, I guess you could say, for him. Basically, now they realize that they need to go and stop these villains, whoever they are, and basically prevent them from causing any more harm. They don't know where Doc Ock is, because in the fight at the apartment, he got lost. He had to run away before the police killed him. I think that's a valid idea. So, Peter, Ned, and MJ all decide to work together, create new devices to fix the villains. They keep using the term fix. I don't know why. But hey, it's what they used. And I honestly tend to forget that, yes, the Lizard is in this movie. You have the Lizard, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro. Who else? Sandman. So there's 5. We were expecting to see a Sinister 6, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. Would have been cool if we had gotten, Venom or maybe Mysterio making a return somehow, but whatever. Sinister 5 works. No, it doesn't. But yeah, they work together. They talk a bit. Ned asks one of the alternate dimension Peters, did you have a best friend? I think he actually asked Tobey. And he says, yeah, but he died in my arms after trying to kill me. And Ned is like, oh, I hope that doesn't happen to me. So, yeah, they have that whole debacle. We even get a slight recreation of the Spider-Man pointing meme from the original cartoon, if you all remember that. That was a terrific meme, and I can't believe they recreated it twice in this movie, actually. But yeah. I can't remember exactly what the decision was to make them go to the Statue of Liberty, which is currently under renovations, to add a Captain America shield to it, which is cool, I guess. So they end up there. This is kind of where the story gets a little bit muddy because so much is happening. But basically, all three Spider-Men are trying to stop these villains, particularly Electro, who seems to be in charge. And no pun intended. And Green Goblin, who's just like the craziest one there. They manage to stop a few of them. Doctor Strange comes in out of basically nowhere, and he has the box, and he's like,
I've been dangling over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours.
I know.
That's how it feels! I have been falling for 30 minutes!
That's why I love that scene right there. But anyway, they have to send them back, but Peter still thinks that there's a chance. Tom thinks that there's still a chance to give them a second chance, basically. So, basically, the only way to really make things work is to ensure that everybody forgets who he is. So, you know, Doctor Strange prepares that spell. With all three Spider-Men working together, it's perhaps one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history, I think. Right next to Endgame's portal scene. Face it, all three Spider-Men from, you know, the last 3 live-action movies, it's a dream come true for so many people. Can't really say myself, I've only grown up with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, but I knew about all 3 of them prior, so to see this great trio working together, it was terrific. Eventually, with some discussion about the things that they went through, including Toby fighting an alien, Tom fighting an alien, and Andrew considering himself lame because he fought a Russian guy in a rhino suit. I love how Toby responds with, "You're not lame, you are amazing."
Don't get me started on that.
Hey, what are like some of the craziest villains that you guys have fought?
Seems you've met some of them.
That's a good question.
I fought an alien made out of black goo once.
Oh, no way. I fought an alien too. On Earth and in space.
Oh.
Yeah, he was purple.
I want to fight an alien.
I'm still like that you fought an alien in space.
I'm lame compared. Like I fought a Russian guy in a rhinoceros machine.
Can we rewind it back to the I'm lame part? Because you are not.
No, thanks. No, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not saying I'm lame.
Amazing. Just to take it in for a minute.
Yeah. I can take it in. No, I can take it in.
You are amazing.
I can take it in.
You are amazing.
Thank you. Yeah,
Will you say it?
No, I kind of needed to hear that. Thank you.
Callback to the Amazing Spider-Man. So, having that bit of banter between the 3 is like, it's pure nerd candy. But, yeah, you basically have all 3 Spider-Men working together. They stop most of the villains. And then comes the Green Goblin. Tom's Peter is very pissed off at Goblin. Goblin says, "You're too scared to send me back to die." And Tom's like, "No, I just want to kill you myself." And so they get into a huge fight. I wouldn't say a fight, more so Tom literally beating the shit out of Green Goblin, which is impressive. I cannot believe that he went that dark for the MCU's Spider-Man. He eventually picks up the glider and is ready to kill Goblin with it. But Toby steps in, and you can see the look on Toby's face. It looks like the blank sort of face, but it's actually the look of, I've been there. I've done what you're doing. I don't want you to go down that route either. And so, with Toby stopping Tom from impaling Green Goblin with the glider, Tom drops the glider and shank. They just straight up stab Toby right in the back. Thank you, Goblin. You're wonderful. And Andrew throws the cure to Tom, who then hits Goblin with it, fixes him. I say fixes lightly. And all the villains have been cured, basically. Don't worry, Toby's fine. He's been stabbed before. The movie ends with Peter saying, you know, if we want to send them back, everybody has to forget who I am. Including Ned and MJ. He cannot change the spell this time. Because rifts are opening and we're seeing all kinds of characters, like Kraven the Hunter and a properly accurate Rhino. Like, we're seeing all kinds of people ready to come into this universe. And they need to send these guys back. Like all these villains that we've just dealt with, instead of bringing more. So, in order for that to work, yeah, they have to wipe everybody's memory of who Peter is. So, he says his goodbye to Ned and MJ, saying that he promises he'll come back and, you know, revitalize their memory of him. And then the entire city's memory is wiped. So then it cuts to Peter going to the cafe where MJ works, walks in, and isn't as sure if he should remind them. But Ned walks in. Ned's lost weight and he's looking happier than ever. Peter looks at MJ and sees a bandage that she has on her head. And she says that it doesn't hurt anymore. And that line right there is the nail in the coffin for Tom's Peter. He realizes. So, them knowing who I was hurting them. Because to some degree it was. Them knowing who he was putting their lives in danger. So, rightfully so, he would want to play it off and just walk out. At that rate, nobody in New York knew who Peter was. Not his school, not Happy, not MJ, Ned. All of them forgot who he was, thanks to Strange's spell. And then we go to Aunt May's funeral, where he meets Happy. And Peter asks how Happy knew her, and Happy replies, Spider-Man. You? Peter says, same. So at this rate, Peter has basically given up his whole Peter identity and is now Spider-Man. And that's basically the end of the main movie. Oh, but wait. There's a post-credit scene. And if you all have seen Venom 2, this makes so much more sense. The post-credit scene for Venom 2 has Venom, you know, being transported into another universe, seeing the TV screen of the Daily Bugle revealing who Peter Parker is, and he's like, that guy, licks the TV screen. I don't know, Venom's weird. But yeah, we see Venom and Tom Hardy's, was he playing? Can't remember his character's name, but, yeah, he's in the post-credit scene, and basically he's being, briefed on the whole MCU, I guess, and how there was a man in a suit of armor and a giant green monster, and Tom Hardy's like, that sounds ridiculous. And then eventually, just like all the villains and Toby and Andrew's Spider-Man, they get sent back to their respective universe. But there's a little bit of the symbiote left. So yes, we might see a symbiote Spider-Man in the future, who knows? But there's some symbiote left in the MCU. Oh dear. Oh, and then there's another post-credit scene. It's a trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I'm not gonna tell you anything about that. If you want to see it, look it up for yourself. I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't already. And if you have, let me know what you think. If you want, you can even let me know what you thought of Spider-Man No Way Home down in the comments. My personal rate, 9.5 out of 10. This was one of the best movies of 2021. I think it's definitely right up there with Free Guy, which was definitely one of my favorites of the year. Can't say I know a third one. I've actually watched more movies throughout 2021 than I have in a long time. But yeah, it's good to be back, kind of. I'm still not having an upload schedule because school, work, drama club, choir is all gonna take way too much time. If I just had school, believe me, I'd have an upload schedule again. So right now it's just I'll upload when I have the energy, when I have something to upload. But it's great to see you all, and see you all in the next video, whenever that is.